These days, driving for most of us is more of a nuisance than it is a feeling of excitement and adventure. I remember the days when I used to lay in front of the television and play driving games on my Atari 2600. The days before I could drive, when I'd look up to my parents and be like, wow, cool, they could drive, you know? And the Atari was just rudimentary enough that you had to actually use your imagination in combination with the video games like Pole Position and Night Driver. But you got that feeling that you were actually driving a cool race car on racetracks, and it was really exciting. And one of my favorite Atari 2600 driving games is ENDURO. And I liked ENDURO because it was like you were driving all over the world in this exciting, exotic rally race. You're driving through the daylight and the nighttime, and it was just really neat. And then you grow up and you have to drive to work, and you realize driving's really not all that it was cracked up to be when you were 6. You got a bunch of other assholes on the road, and you can't hit them. Unlike in Atari games, you don't explode into a bunch of pixelated blocks. You got to put gas in your car, and that kind of sucks. And generally, it's just really not that exciting anymore. So, when I like to drive in my Atari 2600 make-believe world. So let's check out ENDURO and why it's so awesome. And what you don't want to do is play Grand Theft Auto before you take that morning commute, because I swear my natural reaction is just to run that guy off the road and take his car. And crash it into that guy. Steal his car.
So what kind of car is this anyway? It looks like an overgrown Hot Wheels. You know, like maybe one of those Indy cars, except it has off-road treads on it. It could definitely use machine guns. But in all fairness, what car couldn't use machine guns? It's the most effective way to get people out of your way when they're driving slow. We all learned that in Spy Hunter. What you're looking at is quite possibly the best driving game on the Atari 2600. This is ENDURO by Activision. No surprise there, Activision made some of the very best games on the Atari 2600. And man, I have never seen a snowstorm come on that quickly. It's as if the screen just changed. And I like how the snow muffles the sound of the cars. This car has one hell of a bumper on the front of it. You don't explode when you run into other cars. Let's get into the gameplay here. What makes this game really unique is that you have variable speed, which is rare on the Atari 2600. You hold down the single button that you have for gas. And although you don't see a speed dial on the screen, you hear the car revving and going through the gears, and it moves faster the longer that you hold down the button. And then when you let go of the button, it continues on at that same speed. To slow down, to apply the brakes, you pull back on the joystick. So in a sense, this game rewards you not necessarily for how fast you can drive, but how consistently you can drive at an average speed. Slow and steady will actually win the race far more often than driving fast and reckless, because when you run into other cars, although you don't explode, it slows you down dramatically, and you'll notice the other cars all shoot past you. Hooray! A happy sound. That means I passed the required number of cars for that stage. The first stage is 200, each consecutive stage is 300 cars. Let's look at the numbers on the bottom of the screen. First of all, great job on the odometer. Look at the numbers spinning by. That's quite advanced on the Atari 2600 and really impressive. The number below that is the amount of cars that you're required to pass per stage. If you were watching, you'll notice you start in the daytime and you drive through the snow level and you get a beautiful sunset, followed by nighttime driving, and then a foggy stage, which is like 5 a.m. or something. And then you come back into the daytime, and you must pass the required number of cars by the next day. The number on the bottom left is what stage you're on. I'm on stage 3 here. This is where things start getting pretty tough because the cars are not only moving faster, but they're spread out more evenly throughout the road, so they're much more difficult to dodge. You guys notice that I've so far gone the entire review and have not once compared this game to Star Wars or G.I. Joe. Not even the obvious comparison like speeder bikes. Because this game doesn't have trees, or Ewoks. And this game doesn't have any hot chicks like the Baroness, or Scarlet. $20 says that Shipwreck totally got the Baroness drunk and took her home one night. I could just see that happening. You know, like G.I. Joe and Cobra are fighting, and Shipwreck was always tanked. I mean, that's kind of obvious. You think... He kind of looked like he was from the Village People, and you have to go through training to get into that gig. As part of his charm. Yeah, the Baroness she was cold and evil. He probably slipped her a tequila sunrise or something. Won her over. Took her back to his apartment by the sea. As the hours speed by in Atari make-believe land, and the night slowly starts to turn into daytime, the game starts beeping at you, letting you know that you'd better hurry your ass up and pass all those other cars, or else you're gonna lose. The car's like Dracula. If you don't win before the sun rises, it burns all your flesh off. 4, 3, 2, 1, and I made it just in time. The technique that I was using was to try to drive as quickly as possible in the earlier stages before things start getting really tight and you're starting to get pressed for time. However, as the game progresses and you get into the higher levels, if you make one mistake, you're really penalized for it. Because the cars are moving faster, and as your car slows down and has to regain speed, you lose 10, 15 different positions in the race. So you have a tremendous amount of catch-up to do, and what you don't want to be doing is trying to play catch-up in the foggy level. Because you do have to slow down. And these are all things that make Enduro an incredible game. Some of the older driving games haven't aged terribly well. Others, like Indy 500, are really cool games, but are more like an automobile version of combat than an actual racing game. Enduro has all the elements of a great racing game, a great arcade game, and a great Atari 2600 game. I found this game every bit as addictive as any of the modern racing games, and in many ways it actually reminds me of another excellent game I recently reviewed, Test Drive Le Mans on the Sega Dreamcast. And when you lose, you are rewarded with a horrible sound that will haunt your dreams for the rest of time.
Driving in real life does have better graphics than Atari. I'll give it that. I think the people behind me wonder why I'm talking to myself and continue looking down like this. If only they knew I was filming a classic game room and talking about Atari.